Hey everyone, welcome back. We are going to be talking about how to groom your backlog like a boss. I'm going to be covering over a lot of different details, and I'm really excited about all the material we're going to be covering today. So let's jump into it. I'm just going to pull up my Jira here, and then we're going to just basically get started. I got a lot of content. Hopefully I can get it all done within the hour here. If not, I am going to be okay with going a little bit over for this one. But yeah, we are going to be covering grooming your backlog. I'm going to be covering a bunch of stuff. We're going to be talking about how to organize it, how to rank, some administrative things that you can do, some tips and tricks. I've been doing backlog grooming since 2013, so I've done quite a few backlogs, and I'm really excited to just share this content with you and essentially just give you everything I know, give you all the cool stuff that I've learned over the last few years and really help you manage and groom and tame your backlog, because these backlogs can sometimes get out of control. Sometimes they can get really overwhelming and you can struggle a little bit. You can really trip yourself up if your backlog is just like chaotic and it's all over the place. So if you've ever really struggled with that, you're going to want to watch this entire video because I'm going to give you a ton of information. This is going to be that one video that you're going to want to share with all your scrum masters, all your product owners, and even your dev teams and like your engineering leads, because this is going to be that one video where you're like, holy moly, we've been doing things wrong. We could have been doing so much better. So let me switch on over to Jira here so that we can start taking a look. I'm going to just, again, cover some administrative things at the beginning, show you the basics, and then I'm going to transition into those tips and tricks. So make sure you tune in. Make sure you're watching this video all the way to the end, because this video is going to be just action-packed and loaded with a ton of information. And if you're a beginner, this is going to be perfect. If you're well ahead and you've kind of been doing this for a while, these tips and tricks at the end might really open some new opportunities for you, give you a different perspective into how to do things a little bit differently. Maybe just, again, appreciate the things that we have here, and hopefully really make a difference here for you. So let's I'm trying to move this tab over to another screen. It doesn't want to go. Okay, forget it. All right, so I'm struggling with Jira and with the Chrome. All right, so let me jump into my Jira project. I'm just gonna go into a standard Scrum project. Now this obviously works best if you're in a Scrum type of project, but you technically could do the majority, if not all of the tips and tricks that I'm gonna be giving you in this video if you're in a Kanban style. And the caveat there is you obviously need to and must enable the backlog view in that Kanban board, so then you can do the stuff that we're going to be talking about here. Now, the only caveats are going to be something that I'll cover at the very end. And only because I'm still not 100% convinced. I kind of just saw it as I was researching and getting ready for this video. It's a technique I've seen some teams do. I wasn't a really big believer, but I think when you do it right, when the execution and the intent is in the right place, this could be a little game changing. So we'll talk about that towards the end. So make sure you're sticking around for that. All right, so first thing we're gonna go do is, obviously if you've never seen a backlog before, on the left-hand side of your Jira project, there is a backlog section. And typically here you will have something like a sprint, and then you'll have the backlog. Okay, now this is a very typical scenario. This is just out of the box. Most teams function this way, where they have a rather extended backlog down here, and then for all the prioritized work, they're going to be working at the top in a sprint. And so you can collapse the sprint, so you can kind of hide all the work that's there, or you can extend this out so you can see all of the work that's in that particular sprint. Additionally, you also know if you're in an active sprint. I know this is not really part of the topic, but just a little nugget of information here. You'll know if you're in an active sprint if these are colored in. If it says start sprint, if there's a button there for start sprint, you are not in an active sprint, and thus you're still kind of like in a very planning mode, if you will. So anyways, we're going to kind of ignore the sprint for now. We're really wanting to talk about the backlog, okay? And so the first thing that you want to make sure when you're looking at these backlogs is two things, and they're both going to be in the board settings. So let's go take a look at the board settings, and let's show you what you should be watching out for over here. So the first thing you want to look for over here is coming down to ranking. within the general settings of your board, you want to come down to ranking, and you want to make sure that this is using rank. Okay, and you'll see that you have your order by rank ascending. So this is really, really good. This is really, really key, and this is kind of what the magic of all this prioritization of backlogs comes into play, because without this rank, Jira will not remember the order of the issues. And so the rank is very, very key, because it's like a behind the scenes field in Jira. You don't really get to play with it, and you don't really get to touch it or do anything with it, but you do get to essentially utilize it, right? So Jira is going to be remembering, and I'll show you some proof of what that looks like within Jira. But Jira is going to be remembering what's going on in your rank, and it's going to then remember your rank. Okay, and so let me kind of show you a visual of that and what that means. And so essentially, when you have rank enabled, if you move an item from the bottom, you can literally drag and drop these things. If you move it to the top, something's wrong with my mouse today. I gotta click better. Okay, you saw how I moved it to the top. Now, if I leave the project, if I go to like another project, and then I come back in, you'll notice that when I go to my backlog, the bug is at the top where I left it. Now, something's been happening here with something's with my mouse or something. It's not clicking appropriately, but where I leave this item, if I leave it at the top, and when I leave to another project, and I come back in from a different project, that rank and that placement is not set in stone, but it's remembered. And this is really, really key, right? Because one of the tips or suggestions that I'm going to make here is that when you are grooming your backlog, you should not be grooming your backlog during the sprint planning meeting. Okay, and so here's the movement of the stories, because again, I forgot to share the screen there. But when you're planning your sprint, you should not be ranking at that point. Okay, so you want to be ranking your backlog at the beginning, way before you even go into your Monday sprint planning session. Okay, and my recommendation is you should be doing your grooming, your refinement between your product owner and your scrum master, maybe your engineering leads. You should be doing this grooming refinement maybe 3 days before your sprint planning session. So that basically means maybe 2 or 3 days before your sprint ends, you should be basically thinking about the future and thinking about the next sprint. And so that's a great time for you to come into Jira and evaluate, okay, what's in my backlog? Again, your product owner, your scrum master, your engineering leads, you're kind of looking at all these things. You're like, you know what, this bug's pretty important. We're going to move this one to the top of the backlog. This one's kind of important. We're going to move this to the top of the backlog. And that right there is essentially the grooming of the backlog. Okay? And this is only possible, again, if you have that rank enabled. Now, another trick that I wanted to show you within the board setting is when you're coming here to the board, you're going to be looking at your filter query. This is automatically going to do by rank. Now, you could, in theory, do by 2 items. So if you wanted to if you wanted to order by rank and something else, you could do that. And so my recommendation here is you're going to want to rank you're going to want to order not only by rank, but by also priority. So I'm just going to add priority here and hit save. We'll hit search first. The issue should all still be the same. The only thing that's changing is that you're going to have the issues are not going to show up also by priority in your view on the board. So let's go take a look at that backlog now that we've added this. And so this stuff here should basically update itself, so that if you're not ranking yet, your priorities is going to dictate what comes through. So very important that you kind of consider. I would personally only leave the rank because, as you can see, if you sort it or if you order by your priority, this is okay the first time, but the second you move something around, the second you move something to the top of the backlog or you move something down to the bottom of the backlog, your other order essentially gets broken. So I've seen some teams that have asked. This is the only reason I'm bringing it up, is because it's something that you can do, something that is possible, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend that you utilize anything other than just a rank. Okay, other teams like to basically sort them by the story points. Priorities is a pretty common one. Don't recommend doing it. I kind of just showed you how I would do it, but that is not a best practice, not the way that I would do it. I like to leverage the priorities, which we're going to be talking about in a few minutes here, but I don't want to sort or order my backlog by those priorities. I want to essentially me do this kind of more manually, a little bit more intimately, because you got to remember that your grooming session here is it's a very not private, but it's a very important, like, you have to collaborate, you have to be communicating between your product owner, your scrum master, and maybe even your engineering leads, right? And so there's a lot of compromise, there's a lot of negotiation that's happening. And so when you come into your grooming session with a bunch of stuff like already pre-ordered for you, it kind of biases the conversation, if you will, and that's not necessarily the kind of behavior you want, right? You want to come in with a fresh perspective, because the beauty of Agile is that you're adapting to shifts in priorities, right? And so you don't want to come in with a pre-established game plan and say, well, we got to stick to these rules, because if the market has shifted, if the customer's needs have shifted, right, and your product owner is coming in with new insight, you don't want to be tainted by old stale data. You want to make sure that you're nimble enough that you can pivot and make the appropriate adjustments in your backlog as the market changes, as the needs of the customer change, right? So you don't want to corner yourself into a corner and say, well, this is the order that we had them in, so this has to be the right order, and has to be the order we continue, right? You don't want to do that, because then you're not being agile. You're being very much waterfall at that point, right? And so that's kind of some of the things there that we're discussing with respect to ensuring that the ranking happens. So the actual grooming of the backlog, right, it's a very basic and trivial thing, right? It's literally looking at every single item that's in your backlog, right-clicking on it, sending it to the top of the backlog or sending it to the bottom of the backlog. So that action in itself is pretty easy to do. Unfortunately, though, the backlog here is really just very, very much at the story, task, and bug level, which is great for your software development teams, and it's great for your product owner, and it's great for your scrum master, right? But it doesn't give you a bigger, like, scrum at scale perspective. It doesn't give you the ability to see across an organization or across multiple teams what's the bigger priority, what should the different teams be working on. So the way I like to do all my plannings, specifically my grooming and refinement of my backlog, is to not even look at the backlog at face value, which means basically all the issues that are in your backlog here, but I prefer working at the epic level. Now, the reason I like to do the epic level is because these epics are usually longer pieces of work that are going to be taking multiple team members, sometimes multiple teams, right? They're going to be a couple of weeks, a couple sprints, and they're really like longer lead time items. And usually I like to think and strategize there, because working at that epic level, working at these more macro levels, influences that backlog, right? Because one of the things that I can do is, assuming that all of my things are tied to an epic, so I'm just going to tie these each to an epic here real quick, so you can kind of see how these things all relate, right? And so the moment that every single one of my stories, my tasks, my bugs are all assigned to an epic, and you'll see them by the colors over here. All right, so let me tie this bug one here. And I do apologize again, my mouse is just not behaving itself today, right? But the second that you have all of these stories, tasks, and bugs associated to an epic, guess what? You can now just work on the highest priority epic, let's say it's this one, and now your backlog is going to be changed so that you're only seeing the stories, the tasks, and the bugs relative to that epic. And so now you and your team can kind of focus at the more strategic level and work within the epics. So what we're going to transition to next is talking about how to think from a tactical standpoint and how to really leverage these epics to help you get some traction. And so one of the first things that I like to do is I like to look at releases from a quarterly perspective. I don't like doing year-long planning because so many things can change in a year. I don't like half year either because again, so many things can just go astray within a year. And I really do love quarterly because quarterly is close enough that you can touch it. It's close enough that you and your team can actually have like a line of sight of like, okay, so here's a 90-day plan. We're gonna go to war. We're gonna go to battle, and we can kind of see we have a direct line of sight to between now and 90 days from now. Anything beyond that horizon starts looking very fuzzy, and I don't like to touch that. I don't like to play with that because so many things can happen within a 90-day period, right? Especially if you're in a startup environment, even large corporations, right? Requirements can change overnight, and you don't want to be reactive 1 year at a time, right? But 90 days is what I've seen the sweet spot, because anything even at a monthly level, which is would be my next best choice. You monthly's okay, monthly's good. You'll get basically a good amount of planning, but you got to do the planning quicker, right? And so this window of like you constantly being in this churn of planning and executing, planning and executing is a lot quicker when you're at the monthly, while the quarterly gives you like a good, here's like the next 90 days, but every sprint we will adjust and pivot accordingly, right? So it gives you, it's just you have the ability to have the conversation and reopen the conversations of okay, so did anything major change, right? Did the market change? Did the conditions change? Did the customer requirements change? You still have that opportunity to do that sprint to sprint, but you at least have some sort of a north star, something to guide you. And so what I like to do here then is in my releases, I like to create a quarterly release, right? So I'll do like a 2022 quarter one, and then I'll set the dates of, and then the dates become really easy, right? Because at that point, you know that the dates are January 1st through March 30th, right? That's the first quarter, and so it might not be so valuable March 31st. Apparently, I don't even know what the dates are here, but here's like you can have quarter one, you can have 2022 quarter two, which we just finished, right? Because we're just in July, so that's going to be from basically April 1st through June 30th, which again we just wrapped up. And so right now we're in 2022 quarter 3, right? And so we would be planning all the work that's going to happen between July 1st and August, September 30th. Okay. And then obviously you would have a quarter 4 that'll wrap you up for the end of the year. So these right here though is really critical that these releases are concurrent, right? These are really designed for the epics, your individual releases, your software packages that you're actually going to deliver to your customer, whatever that release cadence is, whether that's every sprint, every other sprint, once a month, right, or once a quarter. It's up to you and however your cadence is for you and your organization. Those are two separate things. So these releases are really dedicated, and the utilization with my tactic is to save it for the epics. The stories, the tasks, and the bugs can still have their appropriate 1.0 release, their whatever naming pattern and convention you have for those releases, you can absolutely still have those, right? But I like to again do it at the quarterly level for the epics, okay? Because again, this is really where I'm just thinking more strategically, and you guys can tell me. I really have no idea what is going on with my mouse. It is just not behaving today. All right, I've been out all weekend and I haven't used this mouse, and it wasn't doing this on Friday, so I'm not sure what happened here. But anyway, so that is like the tip number 1 here with respect to, okay, so as we move and transition into, let's start thinking about epics and start figuring out how we do our road mapping here and how we start doing our planning and our grooming and all that good stuff. It all starts with this quarterly stuff, right? And so now what I can do is I can go back to my backlog and I can go to my epics and I can essentially open up each one of my epics, and I can now start to call out, and you know what, I'm just going to do it from over here because it's going to be way easier to open them. From the roadmap, I'm going to come down to the fixed versions field, and sometimes you might have to come down to more fields, and there's a fixed version here. And so you can basically say, well, this is going to be my quarter 3, This one's going to be my quarter 2, right? And obviously quarter 2 is late, so I'd be late with that. But again, this is going to help you understand what you're late on or what you're early on, because now you know what the objectives were, or at least when your target deliverable was, right? And what's also cool is because we've done this, right? We've done it's a very simple thing that we've done, which is basically associate an epic to a release, which that release is now within our 90-day plans, right? I can now, in my roadmap view, go look at the versions and take a look at, well, what's in quarter 3, right? Or I can look at just quarter 2. And look, even Jira's telling me, look, we just passed the date. We are overdue. And so Jira's just going to give you all kinds of bells and whistles here. There's a release section here that we can take a look at, right? You can see quarter 3, how it goes, where it ends. So you can see the actual end dates of each one of these quarters. You can see that quarter 2 ended here. And if I scroll to the left, you'll see quarter 1 here, right? Obviously, those are in the past, so Jira's alerting you and notifying you that, hey, these dates, they overlap each other, right? So this bar here, this teal looking bar, is probably going to come from a start and due date that was defined somewhere in here. I'm not sure why I'm getting these dates. I think I probably set a start and due date somewhere. I just don't have those fields visible. But you can start seeing how by leveraging these releases, we can immediately start getting some new traction, right? And what's great here, what you want to be thinking about is these epics and your releases, you want to have goals, right? You and your team should have some sort of a rock if you read traction, right? You want to have some sort of an objective, an OKR, some North Star, some plan, some strategy of like, here's what we're trying to achieve, at least within the next 90 days, maybe even the next half a year, right? And these epics should correlate with those goals. And so you can have your quarterly goals, and you can, even in your description, in the description of your releases, you can put what those quarterly goals are, right? So you have an editability here, and you can come in here and say, finish building out bathroom, right? And so this could be my quarterly goal for quarter 3. And so every epic that is going to be in this one should be relative to the bathroom, right? And so if I start adding things from like the kitchen, the bedroom, those epics don't make sense because now they're not part of that quarterly goal. And this is a very top level refinement that you can start doing, because now within the next 90 days, the epics that you're going to be working on are those that are in the right release, in the right version, right? And now when you come back to your backlog, you can do the exact same thing, because from your epics, you'll understand which epics are in the right release, and then you can just highlight those stories, tasks, and bugs that are relevant to the epics that you've already prioritized. So I hope that this makes sense, and I'm hoping I'm not confusing you, but the intent is, if you start at the epic level and you put those into quarters, and you put a goal into your quarters, right? Then all the epics that you come up with at that point are going to be relative to those goals and those objectives and those strategic initiatives or whatever you and your company are trying to achieve, right? Then when you decompose that epic into stories, tasks, and eventually bugs, because you'll probably discover bugs, right? But as you start decomposing into your stories and into your tasks, because you're creating that parent-child relationship between the epic and those stories, you can then groom your backlog a lot easier, sprint to sprint, because you'll be able to see just the epics or focus on just the epics that are relevant to that sprint. So now, with respect to those epics, now you can rank, now you can groom your backlog and move things up and down relative to, again, the objectives that you're actually trying to hit. So this is really, really key to helping you out with that. So I'm going to just take a pause here. So if there's any questions about anything that I'm covering, let me know in the comment section. I am just basically taking note here of the things that I wanted to talk about, making sure that I'm covering all my points here. So if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. If you're getting some value here, drop a like. And if you haven't subscribed already, I recommend and encourage you to go smash that subscribe button. Trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the summer. So if you haven't already, this is a great opportunity for you to go smash that subscribe button. All right, so let's keep going here. We've talked we've talked about releases. One of the next things I want to start shifting my focus to is to start talking about a couple of other things that you have at your disposal. So Jira is giving you some tools, and we've already talked about the ranking in the backlog, and we've talked about releases at the epic level, but we're going to revisit releases in a few minutes. But first, I want to shift your attention to priorities. So you'll notice that these issues here have a little hamburger menu here on the right side. And so these little hamburger menus basically mean the priority, right? And so depending on you and your organization, you're going to have a predefined set of priorities, right? And so you can get to your priorities. You can go to the settings here. If you're a Jira admin, you can go to issues, and then all the way on the far left, you can come down to priorities. And these are the priorities that are built into your tool. These are the ones that are built into Jira, baked into there, and these are the ones that you can leverage. Now, keep in mind that if you do make changes here, you're essentially changing it for everybody in your organization. So I don't recommend you get too creative here, but everybody within your company should have a pretty good understanding of what is in here and what is represented in this field. Because this field is going to become very, very critical when you're grooming and prioritizing your backlog, because the word prioritization is in the word priority, right? And so you're going to want to leverage the priority field to help you prioritize your backlog, because the rank is great, right? The rank, having a good rank is very important, but the rank is going to be very subjective, right? It's your product owner coming in and telling you and your team, hey, this is what's important. This is what we want to work on. This is what the team has kind of decided is critical, right? This is what we all want to be, the challenges we want to tackle for the next sprint, right? Which is great, and you can rely on that ranking of that backlog, right? And you can depend on having just that order be correct in the backlog, which is okay, which is totally fine, right? But as an added bonus, one of the things that I want to show you that you have at your availability is most of the time you're working in teams, right? And so you're going to have 5, 7, 8, 10 people with respect to like developers, right? You're going to have quite a few people resources to be able to go tackle things. And so if you go look at your backlog and you have it ranked and you have like the first 15 issues ranked and you got a 10-person team, well, there's going to be a lot of downtime if you don't plan too far ahead, right? And so you want to leverage the priority field to not only just show you rank, because you might not always be able to rank everything, but then as issues are created, as stories are created, as features are created, you can give them a priority so that should some opportunity arise that your developers want to go and be a little bit proactive, they as a team can leverage that priority field to help them make a call. Additionally, and another way that this would come into play is your rank can only be like you can only have one number one, right? You can't have two number ones. You can't say these two things are equally important. But I can if I open a task, right? And if I give it a priority field, and sometimes you do need to expand the more fields here to get to priorities. So you can come down to the priority. If I could find my priority field, here we go. And I can give it a highest, and then I can go to another item and I can give that one the highest. And when I do that, what I'm essentially telling Jira at this point is these two items, even though they in the rank, they're rank number 1 and rank number 2, they're very, very important. They're the highest items, right? And ideally, these items, you can do a couple things with your priority. One of them is establish PEMDAS, order of operations. I just love calling it PEMDAS, right? And you can say, okay, team, here's the rank. These are all important. These all have to be worked on in the sprint. But if you had to pick an order of operations or an order of importance, these priorities, pick the highest, then high, and then medium, then low, and then lowest, right? And so you can see how you can start now telling the story without it having to be present, right? Without having to over communicate the intent of the product owner or of the scrum master, right? Everybody can kind of look at this and go, okay, so assuming that my backlog is ranked, these two are the highest, so maybe I'm going to put in my top players and take care of these ones first before I do anything else, right? And so again, those are just different ways for you to leverage that priority field. The other thing that I want to talk about is because I was referencing the epics, your epics also have priority. Right now, you might not be able to see them in this view immediately. Right, I could open up the epic here and come to the priority field for the epic and set it, but you don't really have a lot of insight. And so this is where I'm going to show you a really cool trick that I like to use when I'm coaching with my teams, because even in the backlog, I'm sorry, in the roadmap view here, you can't see priority. So I don't understand these, which one's the highest priority. With that said, though, added bonus, like bonus tip here is you can rank here. So I can actually move these around. I don't know if you knew how to do that, but this can then, you can then start communicating to your team, okay, the epics are in the right order, so tackle them in the right order accordingly, right? But that's one way. Now, if you are on the Jira Premium, right, so if you're paying for all the bells and whistles, so if you're on Premium or if you're on Enterprise, what you also get is an advanced roadmap. And so I'm just going to show you a demo plan here. I don't think I have anything specific, right? But I do have epics. And what I'm trying to show you, I know this is a little bit of a tangent, but what I would like to show you here is if you are leveraging this roadmap view, you can very much see all your epics, every epic. If this is not the first time, if this is the first time you're seeing this, let me know in the comments, because I would love to do just a dedicated video on advanced roadmaps. I think advanced roadmaps is the coolest feature in Jira. But the point I'm trying to show you here is that within your view, now that you can see your epics, over here on priorities, you can actually bring in priority. Sorry, over here on fields, you can bring in your priority. And guess what? Now I can see my start date, my due date, and I can see my priority, and I can actually move my priority to be next to my due date here. And so now, based on these epics, okay, I can say, well, these are ranked, right? And I know that they're ranked because I can actually move these around and do the same ranking. And look, check this out. Don't blink, guys, here. If you're not paying attention, watch this. So when I go to review my changes, it'll actually tell me that the rank changed. So remember at the very, very beginning, I was mentioning that the rank is not a field that you actually get to see or really interact with directly, but it's very much a real field in Jira, and it's really capturing a lot of important information. So even at the epic level, if you're using the advanced roadmap, this is going to be really, really key for you, because I can shift all my epics around and re-rank them and then set the priorities, right? So I can say that this is the highest, this is the highest, this is the highest, and I can bring in my release. Oh man, I hope you guys are excited about this. Let me know in the comment section if you guys are excited about this, because this changes things, right? This changes the game quite a bit, because when you can do all this pre-planning in Jira, in this advanced roadmap view, or even in the basic view, Siri, please do not jump into this conversation, right? So you can set these things up so that you can essentially assign it to the right release. Now, obviously, you won't see this thing here because I'm in a whole different project. I was trying to be lazy, and I didn't bring in the right project that would have my right releases. But you would see quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3 here. You can assign the right quarterly release. You can set the priority. You can set your start and due dates, and then you can order the rank. And so this way, your team is always knowing what they should be working on, where their North Stars are, and how they should be assembling their battle plans, right? This is really key to a successful grooming, because it is not enough to just groom that backlog. If you just depend on grooming your backlog the way everybody teaches you to do it, you're going to be fine as long as your team's there's basically a silo team, right? So if you're just worrying about that small little team, then yeah, follow the best practices that Agile sets for ranking and for grooming and refining your backlogs. But the moment you need to work with other teams, the moment you have to see what everybody else is working on and how everything falls in the grander scheme of things, you need to leverage things like this advanced roadmap, because here and only here, at least out of the box, right, without going to other plugins, because there's other plugins like Big Picture and things like that, which aren't really in scope for all of this, right? But the moment that you start leveraging this, then things start getting real serious, right? Because the other thing that you can do is, and I probably won't be able to show you here because, again, I need to prepare this, but you can create a new story here, and then you can essentially assign it to a different project. So I don't have other projects in this view here, right? So if I go to issue sources, I can actually add that one other project that I've been working off of, which is that Jira Scrum demonstration. So now when I go back to my plan and I come into this epic and I just create a story, it's going to prompt me which project do you want it to belong to. And so I can even here, I can assign work to other teams, and I'm collaborating with maybe multiple product owners, or maybe I have one product owner that oversees multiple teams, multiple technical teams, and we all have to work together. And this is where it all comes together. If you're not leveraging this advanced roadmap here, you're definitely missing out, because this is where you can do all your planning, all the issue creation. This thing just makes things super, super trivial. So that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about with respect to priorities and things like that. So let me take a quick break here. I got a question here in the comments that I acknowledge the question here. Some awesome video. Is it feasible to also manage a project portfolio as a Jira project in free and standard versions? For example, each epic represents a project initiative. So that is a great question, Luciano. So if you're on the free or standard version, you have to get creative. You don't get issue types like the initiative or the project, right? And so if you're on the premium, you can definitely change your view here to go up to the initiative, right? And so if I had initiatives here, I can actually create an issue and I can create an initiative. I can't do it here because I haven't brought it into those two projects that are in scope for this particular plan. But I'm willing to bet if I went to like another plan, like maybe let's try this one, you can see here, this little plus sign is my initiative, and I can actually open it up, and you'll see that this is an initiative issue type. But that is restricted to just the premium, right? But your specific question is, how do you do portfolio management in the free version or in the standard version? And my recommendation there is you get creative with one of four things. One, you use the releases to basically specify the initiative name, right? And so if in any issue you can have more than one release, right? So you can have that 1.0 release, that 1.1.1 release, right? Whatever release is going to go out to the field, you can put that release, and that's totally fine. If you want to put in a quarterly release, you can add another release to it. And then if you wanted to put like an initiative, you can put that in there as well. So you can have multiple releases in there, and this might just get a little bit confusing, but if you have a pretty good communication within your team, Luciano, you shouldn't have too many problems, because it'll be very evident in just the naming convention which one's the customer release, which one is your plan release, and which one's your initiative. So that's that. Now, if you don't want to use leverage the fixed versions, the next field I would leverage is the component. So maybe at the component level, you can call out that project/initiative. Now, this can get a little tricky if you actually use components for what components are used for. But if you're not using components for that, that would be my next place. The next one after that would be at the labels level, right? So within the labels, I would create a label for each initiative or project, slap that label on the right epic, and then you can kind of go sort by that label. I don't recommend that one, only because labels are finicky. You can fat finger stuff very easily, and you can get into some trouble fairly quickly. Versus in the components and in the fixed versions route, you have to be a Jira admin. Only they can create them, and there's no fat fingering them because you're selecting from an available drop down, right? So you don't have to go and like type, because when you go to the labels, you can see all the labels, but let's look at customs, like you just get into some trouble there. So that would be the way 3. The way number 4 that I would recommend you take care of this is, if you have access to adding custom fields, I would add a custom field that is called like project/initiative, and then call them out there. The problem there is, because these are custom fields, anytime you add a new initiative, you're going to have to basically add a new value to that field. So those are the 4 ways that I would do it if you don't want to basically double the price. Now, the other alternative would be to use something like Big Picture. They have like the Big Gantt, right? There's another company, Easy Agile. They make a really, really easy like initiative level planning stuff. So you can go check out plugins that might be a little bit cheaper than basically doubling your price for going to premium. But if you can afford going to premium, go to premium. Not that I'm sponsored by Atlassian or anything, but premium would definitely be the solution for that. All right. So any other questions here, let me know in the comments. And again, if you haven't subscribed, if you're watching the replays here, take a second here to smash that subscribe button. It really does benefit the channel. And make sure you're sharing this with your coworkers. Make sure you're sharing this with your product owners, your scrum masters, your engineering leads, anybody and everybody within your organization that's using Jira and that you feel can benefit from this. You definitely want to be sharing this with them. All right, so we're down to like the last 20 minutes. I still got quite a few things that I want to cover. So let's keep working. Let's keep talking here. I've already talked to you about a couple of things that I had down here. So let me kind of just, again, I'm just taking some notes here. And so let's talk about components next. So I've already showed you, let me just get back, let me get back into my Jira project. So I've already showed you the releases at the epic level, and I showed you the priorities. And you can apply the priorities at the epic level, and you can apply the priorities at the story, task, and bug level. With respect to bugs, priorities are even more important than anything else because not every bug is created equal. I do have a couple of videos where I am talking about bugs in my channel already. Interestingly enough, they haven't gotten a lot of traction, which really worries me because bugs are usually what makes or breaks a project. If you don't take a good care of your bugs, right? If you don't tame those bugs, your schedule and your budgets will just completely go out the door. So if you haven't already, I recommend you go check out those videos. It's just really beneficial to learn how bugs work and how you should treat them. We are going to be talking about bugs a little bit more here within the next 10-15 minutes. So make sure you're tuned in here because, or stay tuned in because we're going to be talking about that. All right. So let's talk about components here, and then we'll revisit releases, and then we'll start talking about bugs a little bit. So components. So the easiest definition of a component is if you have a system, all right, like let's say you're building a plane. What are the subsystems of a plane, right? So you have the nose, you have the landing gear, you have the wings, you have the fuselage, right? You have I always forget the aft. I forget if the aft is the front or the back, but you have multiple parts, multiple subsystems, if you will, right? And so when you're creating stories, when you're creating these issues that eventually do show up on your backlog, it's not really beneficial to just see things thrown in here, right? You can see thing 1, you can see thing 2, bug 1, bug 2, right? There's not a lot of metadata, if you will, that can help you be more strategic with your engagement here. And so one of the things that you can really leverage are components, and you can create these components to help you break down your systems. For example, we can do, sticking with my bathroom analogy, this is just one of the illustrations that I do for one of the courses that I teach. But we have at the system, at the component level, right, we have like plumbing. I'll do plumbing. If I can spell plumbing, hopefully I can spell plumbing. I can do plumbing, I can do flooring, right? I can do, what, vanities? No, appliances? I'll just do appliances. I don't know what you would call the sink and the tub and all that, right? But whatever those are, you can start seeing how I can take a project such as remodeling a bathroom and break it down into subsections, right? I want to do all my plumbing work. I want to do all my flooring work. I want to do all the vanity, the mirrors, and the tub and the toilet, right? I'll just call them appliances for now, right? And these are, maybe I'll do like decor, right? These are just different subsystems, subparts of the overall bathroom that we're remodeling here, right? And so when you have these, I can now go back into my backlog and start basically associating these, oops, something happened here. Here we go. I can start associating my components and say, well, thing 1 belongs to decor. Click outside to save it. Buy shower curtains is obviously decor, so I can add that one to the decor. I can do, this is the same some story. This some story is going to be part of appliances, right? I can do my bug 1 is relative to my plumbing, right? Maybe I got a leak in the plumbing, so we're gonna do a bug 1 for plumbing, and then maybe our plumbing is really bad, and so we got 2 plumbing bugs, and so on, right? So we can just leave it there, and you'll notice that when I hit refresh, nothing happens. I don't have any extra metadata into these components that I just added. So what you want to do here is you want to come back to the board settings, and this time you want to come down to card layout, and within card layout we're going to type in components. And so when we go to components, make sure you click on that add button. If you don't click that add button, it won't actually do it. And then you got to do it twice. You got to do it in the backlog view if you just want to see it in the backlog, or if you also want to see it when you actually start to sprint, then you can add it to be on the active sprint as well. Once you've added it to one or both, you can click back to board, and now my backlog is going to look a little bit different. Let me hit refresh. I have no idea what the heck's going on with my computer today. I leave it alone for a weekend and it just goes haywire. But you'll notice that now we got a little extra text. Here on the left hand side, we can start to see that these all belong to some component. They belong to some system. So this is really, really critical. Again, when you are prioritizing and grooming that backlog, it is very important for you and your product owner, and I keep referencing you like a Scrum Master, right? But it's very important for the Scrum Master, your product owner, your engineering lead to have an appreciation, to have an understanding of, okay, not all this work is created equal, right? Some of it has some priorities, and some of it's more important than others. And now with your components, you can help prioritize an entire subsystem, right? Why would you do decor when plumbing's got to go into a bathroom first, right? Does that make sense? Like, using these components, you can now leverage priorities, but at the component level, you can also say, well, you know what? We're going to prioritize anything that's plumbing. And so whether it's a task, whether it's a story, whether it's a bug, you can now easily identify all your plumbing issues, right? And you can move them to the top automatically. From here, you can also say, well, based on this is a priority one because maybe this bug is a leak, right? It's a really, really big leak. And maybe this plumbing one, maybe it just failed inspection, right? Maybe we just used the wrong connector, right? Maybe it's the wrong type. And so maybe that bug is not as critical. So we'll actually move this one down a priority, and then we'll make it a high, right? Because it's still it needs to get done before we put anything on top. But it's not as high, right? We gotta take care of that leak first. We gotta address that immediate fire. Then after that, we can go and touch or fix some other problem, right? And again, leveraging these components is gonna give you that flexibility, that insight to now. Okay, now you're able to look at your backlog and go, okay, so what epic does this belong to, right? What priority is it? What rank is it? And what subsystem does it belong to? And now you have 4 very, very, very key pieces of information to help you really establish something valuable here. And with this information, now me as a Scrum Master or a product owner, I can communicate to my team not only what they should be working on, but why, right? This is key. Why they should be working on this. And as soon as you explain that why, watch your team completely become a high performance team, right? Because your team now has a reason to do something. It's not just here's the pecking order, here's what you should all be working on, and this is what's coming down from the top down, and you must comply, right? You kind of take away that dictatorship type of mentality, and you start introducing why we're wasting the calories, why we're giving you assignments, why we're making you do this work, right? Because now we can connect the dots. We have 4 dots here that we can leverage to really paint the picture of like, what's the importance here, right? Why is this bug so critical? And I can see, wow, if I don't fix this bug, the whole project gets destroyed or goes out the window because I just flooded my entire building, right? And so you can really, really tell the team here that's a little bit more passive, right? But the story that you're telling your teams is like, look, team, this is the number 1 bug. I need all hands on deck 24/7. I don't care what it takes, right? And your team are going to rise up, right? They're going to come up to the opportunity and say, you know what? I believe in this mission. I believe in this, and I'm going to do what it takes to help contribute and do my part. And I'm going to help my team, and we're all going to work together collaboratively to fix this problem together as a team. And it's hard to say that. It's hard to motivate your team when you don't have all this information to share with them, right? And it's way different when you have a product owner that likes to sit in an ivory tower and kind of just from up there go, this is what shall be done. Let me know when it's done, right? And it's just a whole different team dynamic. And so if you're a Scrum Master, if you're a product owner, right, these are some very subtle yet easy things that you can be doing to really groom and refine your backlog like a boss, right? Where you have a lot of empathy here. You have a lot of over communication, I would argue, with your team. And now when it comes down to planning your planning sessions, you're like, okay, what's going on now? Not to kind of just make rub the folks that don't have um, the advanced roadmap functionality, but when you come to your advanced roadmap, right? If I come back to my demo plan we were looking at earlier, maybe I should really bring in a plan that is that. You know what? Let me just start with a new plan. Let's do YouTube demo, and I'm just gonna make sure that the project here is including my the appropriate project that we've been working off of, because it's really key. So I'm gonna just kick this one out. Yep, remove you. All right, so this is just gonna now show all the work we've been working off of, right? And so I'm gonna change my view setting because I don't have an initiative, so I'm gonna start at the epic with this one, and you're gonna see everything we've been working off of, right? But now here, look, here's all the work we've been adding, and I'm just gonna add those fields back in, right? So I'm gonna add priority so you can see the priority. I'm gonna add components so you can see the components. I'm gonna see release so you can see the release that it's in, and this one here, you can also add the sprint, so you could even see which sprint the team has decided to bring this particular work into. And so look at all this metadata, right? Look at all of this information and the Gantt charts that you can create and the subtasks, right? Everything can be tied up to the right priority, to the right component, to the right release, to the right sprint. All of this can be really wrapped up and really packaged so perfectly that your team has all the important information that they need to effectively plan some really important work here. So that's pretty much it with respect to components. The last thing I'll kind of talk about here, because I am running out of time, and I realize I have two sides to my notes here that I wanted to talk about. So we're gonna actually just defer the second ones for a future live stream. But the last thing that I want to end with you is just talking about revisiting releases. So when we first talked about releases, it was very much designed to have that conversation at the epic level. But you've been hearing me mention something about a 1.0, 1.1. And so if you're working on a software-based project, I also recommend that you really leverage your releases to plan out like version 1.0, right? And then set your dates for 1.0. And so if your 1.0 is going to be something you're going to release like in a month's time, you can do that. And now all the stories, all the epics, tasks, bugs, whatever you're tracking, can all be associated to that 1.0 release. Now, what's key here is you want to notice that your 1.0 release is the dates are within the Q3. So that implies that you're going to have maybe a 1.1, maybe a 2.0, usually not a 2.0, but at least a 1.1, maybe a 1.2. You're going to have extra releases that are going to also fall under the same window as a Q3. And this is okay. This is totally fine, because as a software organization, you are probably releasing more often than once a quarter, right? Maybe you're like true agile and you're releasing like once a sprint. Maybe you're like Netflix level and you're releasing, or even Atlassian, right? Atlassian every day releases to production. So you want to leverage this information. You want to leverage these releases to, again, help you paint the story, because sometimes, not unless you're a really, really mature agile organization, you're at the end of one sprint, you're not going to ship product. You're most likely going to roll 1 or 2 sprints worth of work into a releasable package, right? And so you want to leverage these releases again, because when you go back to the backlog, right, and I start saying that, well, this bug needs to go out with version 1, right? And so once you start associating, okay, these go to version 1, and let's assume that I had like more versions on here, you can see that the release will also show up in your backlog, right? And so this is, again, now yet another piece of information that you can leverage to explain the why. Because think of this scenario: your team is working on a highest priority issue, but for some reason your product owner has deemed that this particular issue is a version 2.0 problem, right? We're going to defer it to the next major release. Does it make sense for your team to be utilizing very expensive software dev time and budget to fix a problem that you've already established and communicated that it's not going to be a priority until the next release, even though it's still a priority 1, right? It's still the highest priority, but it's been deferred. It basically gets sidelined, and you're essentially saying, this is my new priority 1 when I go start the next release, right? And so you don't have to lose sorry about that. You don't have to lose your priority even though you've deferred, right? You can still have a very, very important new problem, or very, very, very important problem that you're just not going to solve today, right? And so again, leveraging all of these things in this environment here are going to really, really help you to paint the picture. So I'm gonna end it here because I really need some water, and I'm gonna drop some links as well. So in the description of this video, I'm gonna drop a couple of links for you to kind of go watch a couple more videos that'll kind of guide you a little bit more into grooming and refining. And we'll pick it up. We'll pick it up again. So I do these live streams every Tuesday. So if this is your first time, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you drop a like. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comment sections below. And if you're watching the live replay, welcome. I do these every Tuesday. I'm trying to do them at 6-7 o'clock Pacific time. Probably going to be 6 p.m. going forward Pacific time. So make sure you're tuned in. Make sure you stick around because it's happening the rest of the summer. So we got another 8, 9 left for the rest of the summer. So if you found value in these, drop a like. Make sure you subscribe. And I'll open it up here. I got a couple minutes here. So if anybody wants to ask a question from the chat, let me know. I'd be more than happy. Luciano, thank you so much for your feedback here. It was really, really awesome to take an opportunity to answer your questions. So if you have any other questions, don't be shy. I'm usually a pretty easy to approach person, and I'd be more than happy to help you out. So with that, I'll leave it here. Any more questions from anyone? If you stuck around this long, thank you so much for watching. I have a bunch of videos the whole summer long, 60 videos for the whole summer, and so we're probably on week 5. I think I just started week 5 of a 13-week summer. And so again, if you haven't subscribed already, you're going to want to make sure you hit subscribe so you get all these videos. And I appreciate you taking the time to come and watch. So I am not seeing anything in the chat, and so for the sake of everybody not just dragging this on, I'm going to end it here. So thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you got value. I do have a part 2. We're going to be doing this maybe next week or the week after. And so I still got another backside of a sticky to cover here. And so I hope you got some good value out of this one. So thank you very much, and I'll see you all next week.
I feel nauseous, believe me. Never had a lot of shit come easy. Had to work hard, struggle just to be me. Had to rise up just so they could see me. Did what I had to do just to feed me, and what was left over I put towards my dreaming. But the only thing in life that has meaning are the things you gotta work for, believe me. Take into your hands a plan, your own hands can land your own brand. And damn, I feel like no one takes accountability. They want the credibility, convincingly unwilling to put in the hours it takes to get some power. Don't be fucking sour, take a cold shower. Scream until you're louder, work until you're prouder. And all the doubters, they're just your downers. I swear to God they all let me down. I always fought just to wear the crown. I'm off at these fucking clowns who were all taught they deserve an ounce. It's only worth it if you work for it. It's only worth it if you work for it. I won't stop till they hear me now. I won't stop till I wear the crown.